Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Moving Forward. I want to make it a night of reflection because there are some who are too blind to see the work that is being done by the present government in making every effort to alleviate poverty in our midst. This is something many countries are fighting to do, and in the Caribbean it is now becoming necessary. In looking around the world, it is not an easy task because many are complaining of the rising prices of food and many others in our midst, more so those who are not getting any form of subsidies. It is without a doubt a painful story. Therefore, the majority of governments around the world face a serious problem, and the present government is no different. However, before I go any further, let us stop to pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O Father in heaven, send down the Holy Spirit, not only on the government, but all those who are disbelievers. Bless the country and those who run it, more so the Prime Minister, Philip Joseph Pierre. Help us to see the light that is beginning to pierce and to remind those that were in darkness before Philip came to the fore. I say this to the people, that he is not perfect, but is honest and thinks strongly of the poor in our society. There is no doubt in my mind that he will not rest properly until the standard of living in this country rises to a level that helps those who are poor and destitute to overcome their burden of poverty. I believe in you, Father, because you are without a doubt the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, and the Lords of Lords. Amen. Tonight I quote from the Bible, Sirach verses 4:17 to 25. Son, be humble in everything you do, and people will appreciate it more than gifts. The greater you become, the more humble you should be. Then the Lord will be pleased with you. The Lord's power is great, and he's honored by those who are humble. Don't try to understand things that are too hard for you or investigate matters that are beyond your power to know. Concentrate on the law which has been given to you. You do not need to know about things which the Lord has not revealed. So, don't concern yourself with them. After all, what had been shown to you is beyond human power to understand. Many people have been misled by their own opinions. Their wrong ideas have warped their judgments. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Brothers and sisters, much of what I have put forward from the peace in the Bible is relevant in St. Lucia today. We now live in, especially when we look at the opposition, we now have in our midst, they need to know that passage. The last part of that Bible verse is so true that many people have been misled by their own opinions. Their wrong ideas have warped their judgment. This is without a doubt relevant in the politics of the opposition because they're too blind to see and seem to be grasping at straws because they live in a fool's paradise. In my humble opinion, we have a disingenuous society where many in the opposition seem to live in a land of make-believe because they are unable to face the truth about the mess that they left behind. They are now simply grasping at straws to pretend that all the failings in our society is the fault of this present administration, forgetting that they were there for 5.5 long years when the seeds of what we have today was festering and growing because we had a government who really did not care for the society on the whole, but only for their family, friends, and foreigners. Tonight I'm sad, without a doubt, and towards the end of this program, you will come to know why. However, I want to touch on an issue that is dear to me and many others, and that is, in my opinion, we have a non-functioning public service, more so at the higher echelon of that service, because politicians want to be both politicians and to run the public service to their way, even though there are rules and regulations which have to be observed. I must say that much of the diminishing roles of the public service began with Kenny, in my view, and has also been alleged by many. This went completely awry when the Alan Shastner government came into force or into power. And as allegedly said, he had to commensurate some of his ardent followers within the service then, who allegedly passed on documents during the election of 2016. Yes, they won, and these people had to be compensated. And what we saw was a complete transformation of the public service. We saw many of their friends becoming permanent secretaries, beginning to things on the government's women fancies. Oh yes, one of those which was as clear as the eye can see was the $7.3 million that broke all finance rules and regulations, and the permanent secretary and others failed to stand up for what was right, stand up for what was just. So much so today, the country has never received the COVID-19 viruses, and no one have had to suffer the consequences for this blatant act of dishonesty and, in my view, alleged theft. Many within the service then were complicit in what took place. This case to me was as clear as the eye can see, yet the so-called special prosecutor has been unable to come up with any facts on this issue. Yet monies are outstanding. And this deal that was, in my view, blatantly fraudulent. The other is the 500 acres of land sold to T.O.R. King at $60,000 an acre. Do we know where this money is sitting? Because it was land sold to someone who, in the end, had government lands in his hands that he allegedly bought. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, should not the country see that money one way or the other? Yet the hypocrisy that I'm seeing from the opposition is simply unbelievable and shows clearly that they are now deliberately throwing stones at this government because they know that their alleged fraudulent dealings are coming to light one way or the other. I heard the ex-representative of Soufrière saying that the people of Soufrière and the South deserve better health care. I simply then want to ask him, why did his minister take 3 years of health, that is, after coming into office, to begin to work at St. Jude, if it mattered that much? Many persons in Soufrière travel to St. Jude, he said, on a daily basis. Many children are born in St. Jude. What is happening at St. Jude today is injustice to the people of the South and people of the South and to St. Lucia by extension. On another front, Coco Lorum said that various CIP transactions have taken place and money is coming to the government, and they had raised $100 million, yet they failed to spend $1 on the CIP program into the development of houses and community centers, etc. Again, one can see that these individuals simply have nothing to say, as they are not coherent. At a roundtable discussion taking place by the opposition into why are groceries so expensive? Oh yes, because we have a government, they said, who failed to understand how government works. How can you imagine that? There are supply chain issues, which involves transportation and production element, which has now quadrupled the distance that the ships have to go. So because of this, cost rises. They even mention the problems with the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. Because of the shortage of water, the ships cannot move. They even mention that containers are on these ships. They are paying rent for transportation costs that went up. Problems with production, shortage of supplies around the world. Therefore, there was significant cost of transportation. The price of wheat, which affects bread, was out of control. That is what the reality is. Therefore, I kept asking myself, what is the problem? Because throughout the world, prices are rising, and at this juncture, very little can be done. The governments around the world realizes that they must make every effort to be self-sufficient. We must see that as a lesson for us, because here in St. Lucia, We can grow at least 50% of our food stuff. But here, we must become more adventurous and high-tech in our thinking on agriculture and the processes involved. CIF price, costs, insurance and freight. Cost of items have gone up, and freight, insurance also, will inevitably rise and go up. And on another issue, I saw a program on the 19th with Lisa, and it was a special report. And it says over the past several months, dedicated CIP confronted MSR lawsuit brought by Martinez had simply tried to give the impression that the minister lied to the House, and that it is as if it is alleged that 5,000 to 6,000 applications have been contracted to Caribbean Galaxy, and not what was told to the House by the minister. What they seem to overlook is that the Canals project was entertained by Allen and his government, as has been alleged. Not only that, but the mangroves, and that he did not understand. Those areas of natural beauty was also part and parcel of the deal, which in essence can be so in law. That's what they think. It showed you the gravity of the deal that would have taken place if Allen had won the election. Because it should not belong to anyone but the state. Nothing would have belonged to St. Lucia, because it would all have been sold in deals, lock, stock and barrel. Martinez gave the impression that the RICO defamation case and judicial review have kept him busy in the courtrooms. That's why we haven't heard from him. He gave the impression that the new media group that he has brought on, he commissioned and called Impact World Media, is because of the love for finding truth, because he noticed that there is a lot of fake news and fake information, and therefore it is important to understand the bigger picture, and to an extent, the banks that are laundering money. What we now see is that CBI in St. Kitts, which have now taken out Denzel Douglas, that is from the RICO case, and the meetings involved that he has had with him, have kept him out of action. That's what he said. Several important meetings and have been very informative, and had to instruct his lawyer to release Douglas from the RICO case. The question is why? He again emphasized that in the settlement no money was exchanged, and that the reason was not one thing but many. Because of the nature of what is going on, I will not discuss the content of those meetings, he said. It is not one thing, it is several things. He said that he published contracts between St. Lucia and Caribbean Galaxy. Then he was asked, why did you publish those contracts by Lisa? He made that and made its way on the platform. He said that in trying to deal with St. Lucia, because of what he had obtained, he asked them to meet him. Can you imagine that? You've never been to St. Lucia. You know nothing about St. Lucia. However, on April the 18th, he sent that letter to the St. Lucian officials, asking them to come to Washington and review his evidence. I had to chuckle when he said, and I quote, "They have insulted me. They have dismissed the issue, and it was not a good idea. I waited for Mr. Hilaire. He's now saying that he will now allow Hilaire to dig his own," that's what Martinez is saying, allow Mr. Hilaire to dig his own grave. On what? Waiting for him to go to the parliament to make his lie. In other words, Ernest went to the parliament and lied. He has lied to them for several months. That's what he's saying. He then went on to say that Allen is not, listen to this, that Allen is not the subject matter here because he came to Washington. I didn't say it. it was said, and you can listen to it, and met me here and knows the gravity of the situation for several months. Then went on to say quite categorically that one thing I can say is that he's a decent man. Now he's talking about Alan. He said that the social media does not care of the gravity. It looks as though the social media does not care of the gravity of the situation confronting the country. That these people don't care. They can now read the contracts. The overgrown man called Martinez made the remark that the gravity in what is taking place with our CIP is on several levels. Fraud, money laundering, going to American bank, corruption in the CIP program. He has evidence, but it is not to be shared if these people know what we have. He made the accusation that the government is underselling passports. Chinese frauds created in the Caribbean by Caribbean Galaxy. If that is so, then when he must have known and has now alleged that Caribbean Galaxy, when they signed up, it was with Alan. There were reports that money laundering was taking place. Within that company, I knew that. Alleged money laundering. I was given that information. Yet the lawyer from the firm at the time, or for the firm at the time, was the same lawyer that Alan had. Is that not somewhat sinister? He even made the accusation that much of the deal was sold to at half the legal price. Bonkers. That unless Hilaire have given a gift to the Chinese, it is in the form of a donation. This was also extended to BMAX, as was alleged. Lisa, without a doubt, quickly said that she cannot substantiate what is being said about corruption. This reprobate simply replied that I can say what I want. He gave the impression and said that the people of the country over the next few months, 45 to 50,000 new people will be citizens of St. Lucia, and said that he can prove it. And to anyone listening to this, I say, personally, this is sheer bullshit. He seemed blasé, but in essence, seemed to have been feeling the hammer blows coming at him as he has had to back away from Denzel Douglas in his RICO case. To be honest, I became bored by this individual, and having seen a picture of the man, I am more convinced that we have a right idiot here. In my view, this nincompoop is making accusations when he has not even set foot in this country. That is why he was dying to meet Minister Hilaire or the Prime Minister or someone in government. That simply disappointed him when they told him where to drop off. All is not too well in the country. Crime more so. Shootings are going on. More so the one on the square. And to hear Alan talking about the incident of that shooting that took place, I will come back to that. So hold the line. Don't forget, keep listening. Welcome back to Moving Forward. Now, I was talking about the shooting on the square and what Alan had to say. And in my simpleton mind, what he was saying was simply pathetic. And all his party's PR can come up with is only to say that in the last 3 years, about 300 St. Lucians were murdered. Yet this government says nothing, they say, and do nothing. This is the worst crime wave we have had, they said, and there are now 75 homicides each year in the last 2 years. And this year is going to be worse. But to say that the government is clueless and they do nothing is simply pathetic and unwarranted. When the rise in crime is somewhat rampant in many parts of the world, more so in the Caribbean. Yes, strengthen the laws, increase penalties, as the Prime Minister is saying, even more. Alan Shasney criticizes the SLP hypocrisy, he said, on borrowing, when he was the master of borrowing. He simply forgets that is not what caused crime. And he forgets that all the work that was in the pipeline and some monies had already been paid by the previous government. He abolished that. He seems to forget that the PPP for the airport, he dropped that completely and went to borrow huge sums around the world to build his new airport. This government has now made a habit. Every time we come to the house, he said, it is a new set of borrowing. They have, in less than 1 year, borrowed much more than we have borrowed for the pandemic. And we don't have a pandemic. This government boasts about the recovery that we have. And it is a recovery, they call it. He said GDP contracted by 24%. Tourism perspectives on economic. We cannot talk about growth, he says, not from an economic perspective. Yet, when we hear some St. Lucians speaking and the opposition jumping on board to make a song and dance, we need to look at our neighbors. And I did a little research. The Barbados economy is growing, yet people cannot buy basic foodstuff for their homes. Not only that, they are making it clear that many don't have anything to save. That is how bad it is, to the extent that they are spending more and more all the time. On another front, we hear about crime in St. Lucia, and it was interesting to hear their PR bring to the fore that there have been 75 murders, as I mentioned before, each year in the last tour, and this year will surpass that. Yet some of those individuals were the same ones encouraging crime by their aggressive action in public when they were ministers. Come on, gentlemen, stop playing that. You are whiter than thou. What amazes me is that in Barbados, money is being poured into crime fighting, yet criminal activity is increasing rapidly. I didn't say it, the facts are there. They seem to think that it is due to the dysfunctional families that domestic violence has increased tremendously. Can you imagine that's Barbados? But it seems that they are perturbed that at present, 9 people under the age of 18 this year have been charged with murder. Therefore, this phenomenon is not just a St. Lucian one. The question, therefore, is why? That is where, they, and I believe sincerely, communities have to come together to find answers because of the domestic violence and the disrespect that individuals and families have for each other. More so mothers against fathers and fathers against mothers. Children are being bred into this. In a case in point, especially the dysfunctional family, the minister responsible for crime and also the experts are openly saying that you have cases of families where the children are sitting, doing some work on the one hand, and the more adult families cutting up joints to sell. Can you believe that? That, in theory, is the learning that is taking place in that home. The authorities in Barbados believe that something has to be done as far as crime and criminal justice and the criminal justice system is concerned. It's the same in St. Lucia. They are complaining that the police are called in only after the crime has happened, although more resources for the police are being put in more than ever before. They believe sincerely that there must be a collaborative effort in the fight against crime, and I believe that too. This, I believe, is without a doubt necessary if we are to reduce the level of crime in the Caribbean as a whole. Not only that, we need jobs too, yes, but governments must try their utmost best to create employment without fail. There must be realistic incentives to attract the investors. Not only that, as I've said many times before, we must have a well-trained force. And all that should have been going on, especially in new and high technology. They also spoke about cybercrime and the different range of offenses, and not only that, but different types of violence. Therefore, research is now critical. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want you to bear with me because I was just getting really uptight because of the sad news that I share with you. It is truly a sad night for me because I share a heavy burden and I have this heavy heart. It is painful without a doubt as I share with you, my brothers and sisters, that in the new year we will be having a new ambassador from Taiwan. As Ambassador Shen's time in St. Lucia will have come to an end, there's no doubt in my mind that the goodbyes will be endless and tears of sadness will emerge from many eyes. Even now mine is beginning to show this, not only within the government, but throughout the land. There are many students whom he has encouraged to go to study in Taiwan. The last intake was over 37. When you consider that at one time, when they began, it was only 6. The master's students have increased tremendously. And technical and other courses have gone sky high because of his persistence that his country does more in helping young St. Lucians. Therefore, it is with a heavy heart that I say, in all sincerity, without a doubt, we will miss him greatly because he was one of the hardest working ambassadors we have ever had or I have ever seen. He was like a bigger brother to us all, regardless how old or young we are. He was without a doubt almost like a son of the soil, and he never let the country down. He did everything and anything possible to help where he could. But one of the things in my observation of him, which is transfixed in my mind, is that he never refused an invitation, no matter how small the occasion, to those that many thought was insignificant, yet he would be there. He's without a doubt a humble man, with no airs or graces about him. He's, in my view, only a man of the one Most High, God. One who represented his country to the best of his ability, and therefore there are few like him in the ambassadorial field or world. Yes, I know Ambassador Chu, our one-time man of the year, very well. And he was without a doubt a dear friend who, while I was in Taiwan, made every effort to look for me while I was there. However, there's no doubt in my mind that I made Ambassador Chu proud as I was chosen to do my research fellowship at the 2 top research institutions in Taiwan, together with the diploma I acquired in Asian Studies, which he insisted that I did. My success then made my dear friend proud of me and St. Lucia. However, Ambassador Shen was one, in my view, who was humble to the core. I never thought that he had to put on any airs or graces as an ambassador for his country. A very hard-working and humble man. He will without a doubt go down in our history as one of the best we have ever had, and that knowledge will linger with some for years to come, more so me, because of this man's humility and steadfastness. I would like, if possible, to inform the public of some of the numerous projects that the ambassador has been involved in during his time period in this country. There are some, but not all, because if I have to show all, it will have to be in book form. They are, in theory, too numerous to mention. Projects under implementation is the Taiwan CDF Overseas Volunteers Program, the enhancing efficiency of production, distribution, supply chain in fruit and vegetable sector in St. Lucia. And the second phases was in January, 31st of December, will be 31st of December 2026. There was also the assistance of the economic empowerment of women in Latin America and the Caribbean. In the post-pandemic of COVID-19 period. This was significant then. There was also technical assistance for youth and women's employment, entrepreneurship, and financial inclusion in St. Lucia. We also saw the Overseas Professional Mandarin Teacher Project and the Community Business and Revitalization Project capacity building. We also saw the project for prevention and control of metabolic chronic disease in St. Lucia. The application of information and communication technology, ICT, in digital capacity building project in the St. Lucia Healthcare Personnel Training Program project for ICT in education. Project for enhancing the efficiency of production and distribution supply chain in fruit and vegetable sector. In St. Lucia banana productivity. And there was improvement project, information and communication technology. And last project, aquaculture. Ladies and gentlemen, when I speak about the good work, I want to express that I'm not one of many words, that I'm speaking of many words tonight, but tonight I have to find it, even though I was overwhelmed by what I have had to say. Therefore, it is a time like these that I become emotional. It is without a doubt heart-wrenching. And therefore, I do hope and pray that you, who have listened patiently to what I've had to say about our good friend, Ambassador Chen, that you too will feel the same pain and anguish of losing such a dear, dear friend to this country. As he returns to his country, he will never be forgotten by those who got to know him. He was, in a sense, an inspiration to us all. Now we know and have heard that what will be taking place and the accolades that I have given to the ambassador. Nevertheless, it would not have been so successful if invariably he did not have such an efficient support staff. So tonight, I must also convey to you, the public, that he did have an excellent team to work with, because he had a tremendous group of workers. That was the cornerstone of all he did for this country and the enhancing of the Republic of Taiwan on our minds. They all work like a team, unseen before, especially his number 2, Selina Chan, to make sure everything was fine-tuned in what had to be done. Selina Chan, without a doubt, is a very reliable lady and hard-working. I raise my heart to her too, and do hope and pray that one day she will rise to the dizzy heights of being an ambassador in her own right. So tonight, it is not just to talk about the ambassador, but also to honor him and to praise him and to wish him further success in the future. Further to that, I want to pay tribute to his wife, who have also been supportive of him and also have been pleasant in her mannerisms with the St. Lucian public. We will certainly miss you both. God bless you when you leave. And may you also have soft memories of us in St. Lucia, because we will have those for sure when we think of you too. In concluding that point, I want to point out what has happened in Hong Kong, even having said this, which in my view just does not make any sense. And the country before Britain gave it up 25 years before the date to return, in the hope that life would continue as we now see, or what we now see is an arrogance and viciousness of what the man we call Xi Jinping of China. It's at this juncture I'll take a break and I'll be back. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about Xi Jinping and China and what is going on in Hong Kong right now. And I want to point out that this is a man, without a doubt, who cannot be trusted on any front. Here we have an undemocratic leader allowing, so to say, the sentence that is taking place in Hong Kong of 45 pro-democracy activists. And they are being jailed up to 10 years in prison for just having their own little elections in terms of representations. Xi Jinping must recognize that this was one of the most democratic countries in the world, Hong Kong. We saw the same attitude by him in Tibet and Xinjiang province or territories. But what we must never forget is that he made it clear that Taiwan was the same as Hong Kong. We must never forget that. Where the One China policy applies, and that is without a doubt a fallacy. What the world must know, and many have known this, is that whereas Hong Kong is attached to the mainland of China through the new territories, Taiwan has never been joined to the mainland. And if that was so, it was long before the Big Bang in prehistoric times. In my research at Academia Sinica, as a research fellow, this was quite clear. When I was doing archaeological research, maybe Xi Jinping is not aware of this. Taiwan, as I mentioned before, have been ruled by other countries such as Japan, the Dutch, the Spaniards. Not only that, Taiwan has its own language spoken at the time by 21 tribes together with their own culture. Today, as I mentioned before, there's still 16 to 17 that exist, unrecognized tribes, which amounts to over 350,000 people. There is no doubt that any move by Xi Jinping to attack Taiwan will culminate in a third world war. Not only that, Taiwan now has the capability of hitting back at China. And one of the most vulnerable targets is China. In China is one of the world's biggest dam, which is at present slightly weakening with 3 cracks. I believe Xi Jinping is showing aggression towards Taiwan because he thinks that they will crumble with fear. He sees the President Lai as a separatist and pro-independent. But this is simply absurd because Taiwan has been an independent country who doesn't rely on China for anything. In fact, it is in China's poorer days, it was the American government and Taiwan government who came to China's aid. They must never forget that. Now back to St. Lucia. And I begin with the representative of Choiseul, Colin Timothy, on his show, making the point that registered farmers in his constituency who wants water tanks and had spoken to the Minister of Agriculture, he was told to contact the extension officers in the area. Then he talked about victimization, as the lady who is in charge is the one he beat at the last election. He mentioned that the water tanks are like a political payback for the Fortuna Belrose doctrine. What he seemed to forget is that Allen endorsed the Belrose doctrine, policy, and programs. For example, people of Castries East were rejected, as alleged, in inquiring any help when his government was in power, because there was the policy that government did not invest in those constituencies if they did not buy into the vision and doctrine of the United Workers' Party then. You did not get assistance. Castries East did not invest, and therefore, to the extent, as I have mentioned before, even the playground that was built for children had to be closed because there was no funding to keep it going. Not much work was done on the roads and elsewhere. The ex-Minister of Commerce seemed to forget that the callous attitude by his government and party when in power. But Philip Joseph Pierre is not like that, and believes that he is the Prime Minister for the country as a whole, all its people, unlike the alleged reprobate we had before. There was also no funding for the Victoria Park, which housed both football and cricket, housing existence programs of names which exceeded the amount was given to them, to Bradley. But assistance have also given to community development program. Yet they have got assistance. Mr. Fredericks calling the Timothy Show to make it clear that the representative for Roselle was not telling the truth. And without a doubt, what he was saying was the untruth. He made it clear that the representative for Roselle submitted more than what he was allocated or should be allocated. He also stated that the constituency office, over the period that the government have been in office, $1.3 million have been paid during that period. He also made it clear that between 2016 and 2021, 6 constituencies that were Labour were not in a position to get resources based on that Belrose doctrine, which refused opposition member not a penny to spend on their constituency. Yet Philip has not done this because he's a man of the people. This is what democracy is all about. One cannot be penalized for choosing the party of one's choice. However, the money is the country's, and each constituency should be treated the same because in the long run, we are all St. Lucians. Mr. Fredericks made the point that no one can refute facts as it cannot be refuted or rebutted. Then pointed out that the 2 representatives who are not part of the government got $3 million between the 2. As I end tonight, I want to remind fellow St. Lucians who drive on the road that they should listen to what the Prime Minister had to say in regards to dangerous driving. The PM is profoundly disturbed at the level of road accidents and fatalities in St. Lucia by what is happening on our roads. He sends his condolences for all those who have lost their lives, more so the man who lost his life at Praslin. He says, I want to urge the people of St. Lucia to drive more responsibly and drive more carefully. This he sees. He sees that the careless and reckless driving can be avoided. He said the sheer madness on St. Lucian roads must be brought under control. And then he said he will have discussions with his Commissioner of Police to look into the reason why we don't have speed guns to measure the speed vehicles are traveling in this country. There have been over 500 calls to the fire service. Most of our healthcare problems are in the emergency wards because of wanton accidents in this country. And as a nation, we must take responsibility for our action. This reckless driving is unacceptable Police should ensure that they take measures to stop this nonsense. The reckless driving is a crime. Enforcing the laws of this country. We need to stop this recklessness, this irresponsibility in our country, so we can use our resources in better ways to help the people of St. Lucia, to deal with accidents that could be avoided. Looking forward to the improvement of the driving culture of this country, he said. As I've said before, I believe sincerely that we should now have a point system, that a driver with at least 9 points should lose his license, especially those who insist on speeding, going to nowhere. What infuriates me personally is that there are some who drive with a phone in one hand, and the other hand they're trying to stare, and could not care less who is about. That is, looking at other drivers on the road. They whirl and swerve. Oh, that's okay. The minibus drivers should now be given a severe driving test in order to drive passengers, because they tend to forget that they are driving people. Some young people or women with their children. I believe sincerely that there must be more traffic policemen on our roads. And I've said so as often as I can. Much of our policemen should be on the road on motorcycles if necessary. What happened by the square? Police motorcyclists would have been able to pass the word around very quickly and may have apprehended these individuals. It is a more efficient and effective mode of policing in this day and age. Before I really end, I could not bring to the fore the comedy that is being displayed by the opposition, which they call politics, because much of what they say is sheer bull and tripe. At this juncture, I'll take the next break, and then we'll come for our last bit. Hold the line. Welcome back to Moving Forward. I was talking about Alan, and I heard him saying to the press at his office, his plush office, hopefully not paid by the taxpayers. That's all I can say. That on that occasion I had to pinch myself as to whether I am alive or on some high cloud, because I'm sure that politics is certainly not the comedy that Alan portrays it to be. My first degree was in political science and political sociology, because I love politics and social issues. Well, until I met those empty-headed men and women who came into our politics and headed by him in the disguise of the United Wreckers of the Poor. Listening to this individual they called leader of the party, I have to agree with many in the country who are allegedly saying that this individual is a pathological liar. Yet this individual had the gonads to say that this government mismanages the country. And further to that, this government lies. This is becoming a pattern of behavior with this government, he said. They say anything in essence. They just lie. Wait. I'm not finished, ladies and gentlemen. He went on to say that they're breaching the trust of the people of the country every day. And the persons who pay the price are all of us. We are suffering, he said, and we feel the pain of living in this country. Oh my God. Why don't you go back to the country you're a product of? He went on to say, what has taken place in health? See, what is not taking place also, he said, in national security. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm at my wits' end when I hear an alleged pathological liar calling another, that is our government, liars. Is that what we term reverse psychology? Well, I want to say to the leader of the opposition and his mendicants, jackasses, and barking dogs that it simply does not work or have any substance what they're trying to do. I say this in all sincerity, that every time I've heard those people talk, it churns my heart. However, what does upset me is that when they bring on young people who are given something to read that they don't understand, is in my book, sheer hypocrisy and abuse at the highest level. The youngster, one can see, did not understand what she was saying, as there was no passion to show she understood what had been written for her. It shows us how far the United Records of the Poor can go with their facade. Finally, in talking about rising prices, the leader of the opposition asked a question of the government. What do you do to soften the blow, recognizing that there is no health care? That's what he is asking. I had to laugh to my heart's content, because this is the same man who underhandedly nearly destroyed our health care system because of his urge to privatize it for his friends. This showed me the con merchant he is, and yet he was the one trying to explain to the public what is meant by being a con merchant and what it was all about. He simply did not realize that he was talking about himself, maybe, but he was simply, again, too blind to see or to understand. His government put very little money into the country's health care, nor in crime fighting, the infrastructure, or in commerce. Yet he has the gall to stand up, making abusive remarks at this government, who is picking up the pieces that he left behind admirably. Alan, even those overseas are asking for you to leave our politics, as you will never be Prime Minister of this country ever again, and may even lose your seat. No wonder you are now in Deriso, pretending to care about the youngsters, talking to the kids, going to rum shops, etc. Ah, well, time is not on your side, because the darkness hovers over you, because what is in store for you is the demise of your party and yourself, the United Records of the Poor. Then, comrade, you will be able to go to the country you are a product of when it happens. In closing, I send a word to the special prosecutor to tell him, Ibn Magadusa, in all sincerity, that you need to realize that the whole country wants to hear something in terms of your progress. We are at the crossroads of our development, and therefore those who, when in power, try to stem that development by being allegedly corrupt and dishonest must be called out. The people cannot wait any longer to hear something. If you, the special prosecutor, are unable to do the job, then step down, because you are earning hard-earned money the country needs. I know in my heart of hearts that there are people in the country right now who are able to do the job efficiently and effectively. We have waited too long to hear anything. Tonight, once again, I want to ask all St. Lucians to remember that we are born black and should be proud of that. Always remember the words of Marcus Garvey and Bob Marley, that we must release ourselves from mental slavery. Good ladies and gentlemen, God made us in his own image and likeness, and therefore we should be glad and be thankful for the little mercies we have had in life. So take care. Until next week, I say to you now, go in peace to serve the One Most High. I say a pleasant good night and goodbye to you all. Good night and good night.